Hi, welcome to the Peaceful Home. Today we're going to talk about some parenting things, including how to help your children to share. So I am a mom of 6. I've been a professional organizer, been teaching parenting classes for years and helping families with this very thing. So if you ever have conflict with your children, bickering over toys, not being able to share, or if you have a child who demands that a sibling or a friend share with them, I'm going to give you today the number one tip, absolutely has to be in place to encourage your children to share. So that tip is establish boundaries of ownership. Let me explain that. If you don't own something, you can't share it. Now that might seem a little obvious, but we kind of throw that out the window when it comes to our children, and we expect them to share everything they have, everything they're playing with at the moment. But if we can't establish who owns what or who has a right to a particular toy or item, then that child can't share. The reason for this is you can't force sharing any more than you can force an apology, force someone to forgive someone. You cannot force someone to share. It goes against the very nature of what the word means. To be able to give freely of something that belongs to you, to let someone else in, to prefer someone else, it's a heart attitude. It can't be forced. Now you can take a toy from a child and make them hand it to a sibling, but that is not really sharing. And so often as parents, we're looking at the symptoms and not the underlying issues and not the heart. And so we just go around trying to make sure that nobody's unhappy. So if little Susie's happy because big brother Billy won't give her his truck, it's like, you know what, Billy, you need to share. Now you give that to her for 15 minutes. And the point there is, imagine someone walking into your home. Imagine a neighbor coming in and saying, wow, I really love your dining room table and I'm having a party next Saturday. I'm going to take it and use it. That would be ridiculous. You're like, you can't take my table. It belongs to me. But we do this with our kids all the time and we expect them to be okay with it. So not only will this help sibling relationships, it will help build bonds of trust between parent and child. We want to show our children how to be self-governed, not just to sit helpless while someone else exerts their will over them, including a parent. So in establishing ownership, there's 2 things to consider. First of all, what does a child personally own? Maybe a special item that they received as a birthday gift. And what is community property? What are family toys? Maybe a board game that the whole family received for Christmas. If you don't establish ownership, no one knows what belongs to them, and therefore they don't have the ability to share. So the first thing I want you to do is grab every single toy in your house. This could also fall under organizing, so it's a great time to do this. Every toy, bring it in to the living area and start to go through these things with your children. If you've seen my closet clean out video, I talk about how to help kids make decisions with what should stay and what should go. So I'll link that below. So go through that method with each toy, have them handle each thing and make a decision. Do we love this? Do we use it? When's the last time we played with this? Sometimes our children have so many toys that they can't even see what they have, and so they don't play with something because they forgot about it. Simplifying, cutting down the number of toys your children have will help them make decisions easier and not be so overwhelmed. This also is an amazing tip for helping reduce anxiety in the home. They've proven that too much clutter, too many choices ups anxiety in children. So this is a great way to go towards preventing that. Have your children decide which toys are community toys and which ones personally belong to a child. So the ones that belong to Susie, the ones that belong to Billy, those I would recommend go in their room in a special spot. Even if they share a room, they each can have their own specific area for their belongings that no one else has a right to get into without permission. All of the other toys, I would suggest that you put them in a common area. We would often take our hall closet, remove the jackets and coats out of it, and do simple supports on the sides with plywood shelves. And once we put the shelves in, all of the toys were in stacking bins, labeled, and that was our checkout closet. So whenever it was quiet time, afternoon playtime, our children could go to the closet, choose the Legos, choose the littlest pet shop, whatever it was, and pull that out and have it to play. They also knew that if they checked it out, they would be responsible to clean it up and return it before dinner time. So this also helps with just general cleanup in the home. One thing that you do need to pay attention to is each time your child has either a birthday or it's Christmas, they receive some kind of gift. Normally if they buy a new toy, it's pretty clear that it's going to belong to them. But when they receive gifts, so let's say for a birthday, they receive a new blouse, they receive a book, they receive a bracelet, and a board game. Well, most likely the book and the board game could be put in with the family items to be shared all the time. But it's up to them. If it's a very special book, they might want to keep it in their keepsake box only for them, and they should have that right. Sometimes my kids would say, I want everything to go in my keepsake box. I got all of this for my birthday. And they have the right to do that, and they don't have to share any of it. But after a while, either the keepsake box is getting too full, or they would say, yeah, this board game, it can go in the checkout closet. And just make sure that you do make decisions whenever a new item comes into the house, that it's decided who that belongs to. The reason this is helpful in regards to sharing is that if one of your kids has checked out a certain game and they're playing with it, let's say they check out the marbles and magnets and they're playing with that, and another sibling comes and says, I want to play with that, the first child has a choice. And you need to train them. They can politely say, no, thank you, I'd like to play alone right now. Or sure, come and play with me. And they choose to share and invite that sibling in. When they're ready to clean up, anyone that played should help to clean up, but the person that checked out the toy is ultimately responsible. Now with personal toys, if your child is playing with a special toy that let's say a doll that they received for their birthday, that's very special to them, anytime a sibling goes and picks up that doll and starts to play with it, you might have Susie saying, wait, that's my doll. Often parents will say something like, well, you weren't playing with her, so just let Billy have it for a while. Which goes back to the dining room table. Like, well, you're not using it right now, so I'm taking it. That's not the point. It doesn't matter if we ever use our dining room table. Our neighbor has no right to come and take it. So look at how things apply in real life and apply them to your home with your children. So you would have to tell Billy, this is Susie's special doll and you may not touch it without her permission. So it's always returned to the owner. It always goes back to, I'm sorry I took this without asking. It's especially important with older children that they have a place where their belongings can be safe and little kids don't get into them. And again, we really damage our trust relationship, mutual respect with our children when we side with a younger sibling who's been naughty, gotten into their belongings, maybe broken something, and when that older child is upset, we don't want to deal with the conflict. So we actually punish the older child. Stop whining, it wasn't a big deal. We tell them what they shouldn't feel, tell them how they should feel. You shouldn't be so attached to that, you never play with it anyway. Or, your sister's little, she doesn't understand, don't worry about it. Pushing their feelings aside never helps build relationship. They need to be honored in their feelings, and they need you to back them up and say, I'm so sorry. Susie is little and she shouldn't have done this. She doesn't know better. She's not old enough to replace it, but mom and dad will replace it for you. Now, where can we put this to make sure that Susie can't get into it? And you are actually coming alongside with your older child to help them and have them trust you that they're not going to just disregard their feelings and their stuff and say that it doesn't matter. It's important with personal items that if your child does choose to share, that you praise that. The reason you want to praise them for sharing is because now you know that they actually have a choice. They weren't forced. They did it of their own free will. And so that's something where when you're tucking in your child at bedtime, you can say, I was so impressed with the way you shared with your little brother today. You didn't have to do that, and you were so kind, so gracious. I'm really proud of you. That is important to a child. Praise for something that they've actually done and they've done well, that builds confidence and self-esteem. If there's another sibling, so let's say that it's Sarah who comes and says to Susie, can I play with your doll today? And Susie says, sure, you can play with it. And so Sarah and Susie are actually playing together, but Sarah does something to damage the doll or break it or leaves it outside in the rain. It's so important that we teach our children personal responsibility, honoring others. When we borrow something and we break it, we replace it or repair it. That's what we would expect any friend of ours to do. That's what we would do if we borrowed something from a friend. And it starts with our children. I've seen adult children who have borrowed things from each other, don't replace them if they're broken or lost, and that's just it. Like, too bad I, lost your iPad. Sorry. That's not good enough. We want forgiveness, of course, but restitution is important as well. And so this teaches our children to be careful when we borrow something, and if we damage it, the right thing is to fix it or replace it. So all of this comes into play with teaching our children how to share, how to freely give of their hearts, not to have something taken from them and given to someone else and call that sharing. So the scenario I mentioned at the beginning, kind of the flip side of that, I want to address. And that is a child who demands that others share with him. And the reason this happens is because the parents don't establish ownership. Everything belongs to everyone, and everyone is required to share. So when you've heard a parent say, as soon as Billy wants something, oh, Susie, you need to give that to him. You need to share. Well, yes, it would be nice if she shared, but that's her choice. But when a child hears a parent say that, you have to share, a child can develop a sense of entitlement that everyone needs to share with them. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. I've seen play dates where one child comes in, it's not even their home, and they'll just walk up to a child and say, give me that. And the child will say, well, I'm playing with it right now. You have to share. Give it to me. Now, maybe you haven't seen that, and it's great if that's not a problem with your kids. But if it is, the only way to settle that is for them to understand the boundaries of ownership. When we would go to a play date, we would always have this conversation in the car as a part of training. Remember, guys, when we go in to Billy's house, who do these toys belong to? Oh, they belong to Billy and Susie. That's right. Can we just go grab things and play with them? No. So if you want to play with a toy, what do we need to do? And I've seen play groups where as soon as all the children arrive, it's a free-for-all. Everyone just gets to start playing with toys, but you're actually doing a disservice to your children to making them think that they're entitled to touch, pick up, play with anything they'd like, things that belong to other people. So teach your children when they go to someone else's home to ask permission. Now, obviously, if all the kids are sitting playing Legos and they say, hey, Ricky, come on over and play, they're welcome to come and play. But our children shouldn't just walk into someone's home and grab a toy and think that they're allowed to play with it without asking. So these are just a couple of things that might help with sharing between siblings, friends, neighbors. But remember, without establishing the boundaries of ownership, you can never encourage true sharing. So organize toys in your home, decide who owns what, and if you do have a family or community toy system, Make sure that everyone there is taking turns according to I borrowed it first, or I got it and we set a timer for 30 minutes, and then someone else has the opportunity to borrow it. I think if you set these things up in your home, you'll see a real difference in how your children relate to each other in regards to sharing. Thank you for joining me on The Peaceful Home.